friends, and welcome to the CUInsight Network. My name is Robbie Young. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Growth here at CUInsight, and it's my job on the show to have conversations with thought leaders who support the credit union community. We'll identify issues affecting credit unions and discuss best practices to help us all learn from one another and strengthen our credit union system. My guest on today's show is Rex Richardson, Director of Client Processing at Quavo Fraud Disputes. Rex, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, of course. It's a pleasure.
So to jump right in, most of us didn't grow up thinking that we'd work with credit unions. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, certainly not. Outside of the typical young boy dreams of, playing professional sports and all that. I think the first thing I really recall wanting to be when I grew up was a teacher, actually, more specifically teaching at a kind of higher level, like a high school. Wasn't really interested in early elementary, but I had a couple great teachers that really helped shape me and give me some direction at that point in my life. And I always thought that'd be a really great thing to pass on to other people.
I very vividly remember thinking the same thing after a few good teachers as well.
Yeah, it's an easy thing to kind of look at and just see the impact that they have and really kind of getting inspired on that. I never ended up going down that road, but it was definitely something that I really strongly thought about for a while.
For sure. What was the journey like to your current role as Director of Client Processing at Quavo Fraud Disputes?
Yeah, so I've been in the industry for quite a while. It all kind of started with, I had an uncle who was working for a financial institution, and I was doing your typical kind of high school style job. I was working in fast food, and I was tired of it. And so my uncle talked to me about possibly moving into the banking industry. And through him, I got a job actually on the phones in a fraud department. So I was taking phone calls. I was receiving phone calls from customers who were inquiring about suspicious transactions on their credit cards. And from there, I've just kind of moved throughout the industry. At that financial institution, I went from being on the phones there until, when I left a little over 17 years later, I had ownership of a fair amount of our back office processing. I oversaw credit, debit, ATM fraud. I had interactions with ATM non-fraud and ATM deposit style claims. I worked a little bit with ACH, a little bit with some of the bill pay, with check processing. So I've actually had a lot of experience in having my part in the overall claims process. I knew some of the individuals who actually came over and started Quavo. And after a couple of years, I was having some conversations with them. I was really excited about the direction of what they were doing. And so that's when I made the transition. I left the institution. I came over to Quavo, and I've had the opportunity to work through a couple different things here. Some project management, kind of process architecture. And then ultimately about 4 years ago now, I moved over to the current role I'm in now, which is the Director of Client Processing, overseeing our in-house processing of claims on behalf of some of our clients. And I've been here for it's a little over 4 years now.
Can you tell me a little bit more about Quavo Fraud Disputes and where and how they add value for credit unions?
Yeah, absolutely. So the claims industry, when it comes to credit, debit, ATM, ACH, check pays out, all of that is a just ever evolving, changing industry, heavily regulated, lots of moving processes, different ways to recover, different abilities to do that investigation and that research, all of the impact it has to members and the individuals who are carrying around these payment devices and utilizing these services. It's a so much that goes on within that process. And what Quavo does really, really well is simplifies that. We have some proprietary applications. We have QFD, which is our main process application, which really helps streamline from start to finish the entire claims process. So from the moment that a member is inquiring or initiating a claim, all the way through that entire life cycle of initiation, and then the research and investigation, recovery, resolution of the claim, all of the correspondence, all of the compliance requirements, all of the regulation requirements, all of that is built into this process. And what that does is it not only gives a institution the ability to really see and have oversight and understand the entire process, but it brings a ton of automation. It brings the opportunity of utilizing AI into the process. It brings efficiency and simplification into what is otherwise a very complex process. And so that's really what Quavo does so well, is brings just years and years of industry experience and understanding and knowledge around this claims process and puts it into a workflow and a process that allows our clients to be able to expand, to scale, to, mitigate losses, to really focus on what that process is. All of that resulting in the members getting a more efficient, simple process, feeling more supported, feeling more engaged in the process, quicker resolution, quicker action, and just really helps with that kind of overall process internally from a bottom line perspective, all the way through your external impact to your members.
Yeah, I can imagine that's super helpful. So many credit unions are seeing higher dispute volumes while facing staffing and budget pressures. What are the most effective ways to maintain operational efficiency without sacrificing member experience or compliance?
Yeah, I think one of the best ways is finding a really good strategic partner that's going to help you in all the areas that affect and impact your members the most. What a lot of the credit unions do very, very well is the support, the engagement, offering the products, the services, all of that to their members. The fraud and disputes process, again, can be a very complex one. And as the industry changes, as technology presents new opportunities for, fraudulent use of cards, as the possibility of increased first-party fraud situations present, it's changing constantly. And being able to have a strategic partner who's going to engage with you, bring that experience, look at what your focus is, whether it's member experience, whether it's loss reduction, speed to resolution, compliance assurance, really whatever your goals and focuses are, that's where that strategic partner can come in and help. Let that strategic partner, someone like Quavo, let us handle that process. Let us make sure that you are staying compliant. Let us make sure that as changes in the industry with, mandates that happen throughout the year, with regulatory changes that occur, making sure all of that is built in and set as part of your process. And then that translates to that better support of members and processes and requirements internally. It really drives the ability to not only have a very, very strong focus on member experience, supporting all of the compliance needs, but it's that balance. It's that difficult balance that can be found when trying to, build a claims process, support it end to end, have everything kind of built out and created in-house, and also make sure from a compliance standpoint and make sure from a member standpoint that everything where it needs to be. And so having that strategic partner step in and assist and give direction, be a part of that conversation is really where you can see a lot of that benefit around some of that staffing and budget pressure. We see it a lot, and it's never the best thing, but it's an easy path to go down. If we see volumes increasing, a lot of times the easiest thing to do is let's put people toward it. Let's throw bodies at it. And while that can be a short-term solution, if you see a spike in volume and you need to have somebody come in and make sure that that's worked through, that can help. As you scale, as you grow your business, as you see processes change, and as you see the industry adjust, that becomes more of a cost impactful way of managing a business. As changes occur and you have to create new process, new procedure, new workflows, that also is where some of that cost comes in. And so being able to have a strategic partner who can do a lot of that for you, at the same time allowing for some of that process automation and efficiency to step in and keep your operational costs down, it really supports your overall business, your overall goal for what you're looking for. All of it, again, translating to that member experience.
So you mentioned the hidden cost of inefficiency in fraud and dispute operations. What are some of the biggest warning signs that a credit union's dispute process may be creating unnecessary cost or friction?
Yeah, as we were saying a minute ago, like when you really start to look at managing that aspect of the business, there's so many things that can pop up that result in kind of that financial impact. Starting to see those operational costs increase, your costs of staffing, your cost of training, your cost of maintenance, support, all of that that goes into running an operations center, seeing that volume increase as you are seeing even potentially volumes stay the same. If there's a change in the industry or a new trend that comes in, sometimes that can result in the need for more people, even though you may not see volume increase. A higher rate of write-offs, a higher rate of claims being written off without recoveries being processed, without recouping that money. Even things like higher age to resolution, if you start to see the average time of resolution start to increase, that can be an indicator that the cost goes up, because as it takes longer for claims to be resolved, not only are you then up against regulatory requirements, you're up against recovery timeframes, but you also have members who are curious, what's going on with my claim? Where are we at in the process? And then that results in calls, that results in emails, that results in more contact points where members want to know what's happening. You know, this is their money. This is what they use every day in their lives. And they're curious about where that's at. And that means you have to have people answering phones. You have to have people responding to emails. You have to have people engaging. And it's some of those indicators that can lead to higher costs and start to kind of put you in that process of, we need more people, we need more functionality, we need more processes, whatever the case may be. And that can be some of those warning signs that you're going in a direction where maybe you're not being as efficient or as upfront with your process as you would like to be. Those hidden costs build up so quickly. It can be a small thing here, a small thing there. But when you start to have, members contacting you multiple times, when you start to have people touching things multiple times because they take an action, now I've got to go back and look at it later when there's an inquiry. When you start to see some losses build up because you may not be able to get to your recoveries as quickly as you would like to, that stuff builds up. And while you can easily look at losses and write-offs and the amount of dollars coming in from a dispute standpoint, following through to what's written off, it's those smaller things that start to impact you and build up an overall inefficiency and overall impact. And not only felt internally from, scorecards and requirements and goals, but that very quickly ends up going out to the members and their impact in speed, efficiency, and contact and information. And that's never a place that we, ever want to be with any of our members or our customers.
So true. So when credit unions evaluate managed service or vendor partnerships, what separates a true strategic partner from a simple staffing solution?
I've had the opportunity to work with both over the years. Staffing solutions tend to offer workforce. They offer physical people to be able to step in and work within your process, within your approach, within what's there now. Very rarely do you see staffing solutions come with a solution or come with direction or experience or strategy on how to solve the problems that you as a credit union are facing specifically. really a true strategic partner to me is it's a partner who is engaging so that they can understand where your credit union is, what your goals and challenges are, and then bring solutions, bring recommendations, bring some ideas and some strategy around how to solve that problem. A strategic partner generally is not going to solve every problem you have, but what a true strategic partner can do is identify the areas where, as a partner, they focus on and have the expertise, take that and help you in that regard, allowing you to then go and look at the other parts of your business where you have opportunities, the time and the ability to focus on more things as you have this strategic partner over here who's engaged in supporting you and managing things at a level that is in line with what you would want, but also the efficiency, the solutions, the strategy that comes with it. So that's kind of where, you have your staffing solutions. You hear a lot about being able to scale quickly, being able to bring a lot of bodies very, very quickly. While it is a solution, it tends to be more of a, now I've got resources, but I still have to come up with every piece of the strategy, every piece of the workflow, every procedure, every training guide, every monitoring of quality and compliance. You are still on the hook for monitoring all of that. Whereas a strategic partner, someone like Quavo, who brings workflows, brings solutions, brings strategy, brings the ability to automate, brings the ability to engage with your process, engage with your requirements and needs, and really be a part of that as opposed to just offering you workforce, is really where you see that differentiation.
So as you look to the future, what is Quavo Fraud and Disputes focus on the road ahead?
One of the things that we're spending a lot of time on right now, and is actually really, really exciting, is we are, looking into how we can use AI to further enable decision making and put that into the process. We're working on using AI to streamline decision making as it comes to a lot of that investigation. I think AI, especially in a heavily regulated, heavily compliant space, tends to give people a little bit of heartburn. Thinking of turning over some decision making is always a little bit concerning. One of the big things that we're focusing on is utilizing the abilities and the power of AI to really assist with that decision making. Most of our decision making, most of the process is always data driven. And the more data, the more information that you have, the better off you can actually build these processes to help support decision making. So the idea of having an AI processor who will take all the different points of a claim, especially when it comes to fraud, and identifying all the different transaction details, trends, approach to how transactions are done, all the different details that are looked at in an investigation, and presenting to a person, here's a recommendation of what should be done. This claim should be paid. Here's all the specific details supporting this because this is very obvious true fraud, or, this claim should be denied. Here's all the information that shows the details that indicate this transaction was done with the knowledge and participation of the person with the card. That kind of AI approach, looking at all the aspects of the claim and transaction and dispute, presenting that to a person with a recommendation, and then the person ultimately still being able to identify, determine the accuracy of that, and then take the action. That's something really exciting because not only is it making a very, very consistent approach, but it's also keeping that kind of human in the loop interaction. We want to make sure we're still looking at these things. We want to make sure we have oversight. And the efficiency that brings to be able to have all of that done before a person even opens up that claim to start that investigation. Now they have all that information right in front of them. They have a recommendation. they can do their quick review and their determination of what the next steps are, and then move that forward. That has the opportunity to significantly increase the speed to resolution, the ability to make those decisions happen so much quicker, give final resolution to your members so much faster. And so really looking into how that process can be supported and how we can implement AI into that overall investigation step with the human ultimately engaged in it to make that final decision.
So to wrap up the show, we like to have some fun with some rapid fire questions. While the questions are rapid, your answers certainly don't have to be. Do you think you're ready?
Oof, yeah. Let's see where this takes us. I'm big for it.
So who is someone in your life that's a great leader and what makes them great?
The first person that comes to mind is probably my grandfather. Growing up, he had his own business, and I had the opportunity to actually spend a lot of time with him, seeing how he interacted with people that worked for him, seeing how he interacted with his customers and the people that were coming into his business daily. It was always very, I would say, inspiring. It truly was to watch kind of that interaction, that engagement, and how people can enjoy what they're doing, how people can, bring those people around them and help them enjoy and find their passion in what they're doing. It was always really cool to see. And it's always something that's kind of stuck with me as I go through my approach and I work with people and I interact with customers and clients and people in my life. It was really cool to see. And that's probably the one that continues to kind of be in the back of my mind as I have a lot of those engagements.
I like that. I have a grandparent in my list as well.
Nice.
So if you're going to splurge on something and want to treat yourself, what's one thing you might invest a little bit in?
I did the first thing that comes to mind, and the one that I fully support is travel. I love to travel. I love to get out, see the world, go engage in different places, different things. A couple of years ago, we were able to take all of our kids to Italy for a week, really be able to let them get out and see the world and just us experience it. We just like to get out and move. And I'm not a budget traveler by any means. I like to go find the experiences. I like to go find the, nicer restaurants. I like to go experience the culture and what's going on wherever we go. And so from a splurge perspective, if that came up, it would definitely be travel. And I've probably got 2 or 3 places on the list that I'd be ready to go to right now.
Ooh, what's one of those places?
The first one is actually Mexico City. So me and my wife are going there later this year. And we've been talking about it for years. The culture, the museums, the history, the restaurants, all of the stuff there. We're incredibly excited. We're going to spend about a week there later this year and just going to have an absolute blast of a time.
Ooh, that's exciting. I'll look forward to hearing about that.
We'll do a follow-up.
For sure. Now, this is a bit to that travel question, but if you're traveling, whether it be to go on a client visit or going to a conference, what city are you most excited to go to?
One city I've had just a lot of fun and great experience with is Chicago. I've been there for conferences. I've been there for client visits. Just a really, really cool city. Everything that it offers. And, depending on the time of year, I've been there for New Year's Eve when it was just unbelievably freezing. I've been there in the summer when it's just beautiful and green. But that's a really, really fun city to go to and spend some time in.
I actually have not been there yet, believe it or not, in my conference travels. If there's one book that you think everyone should read, what's that book?
Oh, gosh, this is a hard one. I've read a lot of books, mostly fiction. I've read some nonfiction. I've read some kind of the business and management books. I'd probably say if you're down for a bit of a longer read, there's the classics of like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, just the story behind that, how much detail and complexity there is, and just that whole story of overcoming diversity, kind of that good versus evil type thing. It was just a really, really good read. Strongly recommend that one to anybody. But, it's also a little bit of that fantasy elements and all of that. So it's kind of depending on what you're into. But that's one that I really enjoyed.
I like that because it lets you get outside of your normal and take some lessons from some fictional characters, but are still lessons just the same.
Oh, absolutely. Those lessons, but then also you're 100% right. That mental break from reality that I think we all need every once in a while is needed as well.
So what is your best life hack for integration and balance between your work life and your life?
So this is a very much if you can. I recognize this is not, depending on your role, the industry, all of that. But the biggest thing that I did that made just a huge difference is turning off notifications. One thing that I found myself in was once you start to get things like your messaging system for work on your phone, your email on your phone, all of that, and the availability of smartwatches and phones and TVs and tablets and everything, the notifications are something that just never, ever let you break away from work. Even if you're not responding to them, even if you're not engaging in them, seeing those pop up on your watch, on your phone, whether you're with your family, you're out to dinner, you're trying to get ready for bed at night, whatever the case may be, those notifications just continue to draw you back into work so much. And while it's not always possible, sometimes you need to be able to stay engaged and you need to know what's going on. But if you can, turn off your notifications once you are, finished with your day. Of course, you can still go back and check in. You can pull up that app. You can pop on your laptop, whatever the case may be. But turning off those notifications does a ton to let you kind of have some of that life focus without that constant pull of this next thing popping up and this next thing coming in. It creates a lot of urgency where urgency isn't necessarily needed. And I found for me, felt like I was never, ever, ever away from the office.
That is so true. I found that removing my Apple Watch from my life was a good way to get rid of some of that because it was just doubling down on the reminders, but in a very feedback oriented way where I'm now looking at my watch like I'm trying to tell the time 24/7.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just the technology and the devices and all that are great. Like I love my Apple Watch. I love using it for tracking workouts, tracking steps. I've got kids. So as they send texts or they have needs, being able to make sure I see those without any delay is really good. But you're so right. Like it also just means you're constantly tied to something. You're constantly a part of something. And, you don't even realize how much that is until you make that separation. And then suddenly there's some silence that you didn't realize was not there before.
Yeah, so true. So we'll be sure to link to everything we talked about in the show notes. But my last question for you is, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share or asks of our listeners?
Yeah, I guess as you are looking at your business, as you're looking at your day-to-day, spend some time looking at those opportunities. Where do you have some of those efficiencies? Where do you have some of those hidden costs? And, sometimes those costs aren't immediately obvious. That's where it does take a little bit of, looking into things, a little bit of assessment of how things are set up today. But get to know and understand where those exist. And, as you have that realization and that identification of those, start to have those conversations about what's the best way to approach that. And a lot of times that strategic partner and bringing somebody in to be a part of that conversation and offer solutions can go a really long way in not only ensuring you're, reducing some of those costs, improving your members' experience when they start going down that path of claims and fraud and disputes and all of that. And, give you the ability to focus on areas of your business that maybe you haven't had the time or chance to do so. That's where someone like Quavo can come in and help and engage and support and give direction and really help move down the path. And especially as we continue to go down the enhancements of AI supported investigations and the improvements that'll take, like just spend that time looking into your business, spend that time understanding it, and, start having those conversations and see where we can help.
Well, thank you again, Rex, for being on the show. For episodes like this one and more from across the credit union movement, please visit CUInsight.com to read, explore, and subscribe. Stay well, and thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in today. We'll be back again next time.